Good evening, everybody. Welcome again to Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Welcome to another edition of the Nick Saban Show. I am Eli Gold. Our special media guest here at the restaurant is Cecil Hurt from the Tuscaloosa News. And joining us from his home here in Tuscaloosa, head coach Nick Saban. Coach, how are you, sir? Good evening.
Doing great. How y'all doing?
We are well. Congrats on the win on Saturday.
Oh, good. I appreciate that. Thank you. Cecil, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm masked up today, so.
He is masked up and he has a microphone so we can all hear what he has to say.
I'm glad to see Kristen fixed your background behind you. And it's neat and orderly.
Like that for, 13 years, whatever was back there, but I kind of got chewed out about what my background looked like. And I said, well, if you want to do something about it, fix it. So it got fixed.
Indeed, she did. Yeah. Listen, let me start before we get to football. There's something that transpired today that I know made you very, very proud. They announced the semifinalists for the William Campbell Trophy, which goes to the scholar athlete in all of college football. That award was won by Barrett Jones a few years ago, and Landon Dickerson was named one of the semifinalists today. A wonderful honor for him.
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. I think if you're really a college football fan, and I know how much people get excited about the Heisman Trophy and who wins the Doak Walker and all these, performance-based type awards, which are great to reinforce, players' positive performance. But I think this Campbell Award, I knew Billy Campbell. He was a good guy and a good coach before he got in the business world. But what it represents, the character, the academics, the overall achievement that somebody has, this is, in my mind, one of the most prestigious awards that anyone can, be honored with. And, for one of our players, I was so proud of Barrett Jones when he won. Now for Landon to get in the semifinalist, it's really, really fantastic for him and his family.
It really is. We congratulate him, and it's something we can all be proud of. Cecil, why don't you grab the microphone there and jump on in, and let's talk a little football with the coach.
Coach, the first question, this came up on the SEC conference call yesterday, but I wanted to sort of follow up. It's a little bit of a quirk of the schedule, but for the next 4 weeks, you'll be coaching against coaches who were former assistants of yours. And I just wondered, I know you've been in the opposite situation in the NFL. You coached against Coach Belichick's teams. And I wondered, does it have any effect? Do you notice it, or do you just shake hands and then the game's on?
And I believe we have lost the coach and everybody except you and me, Cecil. So
there's a disappointment.
There's a major disappointment. You talk about a downer. We're going to have to just sit here. And it is an interesting, what is it now, 19-0?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I think
the
that's
coach has. Yeah, you wonder.
What the streak is.
Yeah, he said the other day in the press conference he wasn't even aware of that.
Well, it's varied. He has coached against Lane before, obviously, when Lane was at Tennessee, but not since Lane was an assistant. Lane Kiffin was an assistant. But it's just a quirk of the SEC schedule and a representation of success. Coach Bryant used to have a similar situation where he would coach against Steve Sloan, Jackie Sherrill, so many others who went on, Charlie Pell, et cetera, who went on from Alabama or Kentucky or Texas A&M, like Gene Stallings, which Coach Brown also coached against.
Sure.
And probably, I wish we had gotten his answer, but it's probably something that you shake hands, and then it's not something you think about during the 60 minutes. But if we get him back quickly, hopefully you'll expound on that.
No doubt. Again, folks, we apologize. This show being done, we're at Baumhauer's, as we always are, but obviously because of social distancing and just being safe, the coach is at home, others are elsewhere, and we seem to have lost a connection. But we do have a good group of engineers working here behind the scenes trying to get everything back in line. Don't forget, tune in Saturday, Bama and Texas A&M, presented by Golden Flake. Coverage begins at 11:30 in the morning, kickoff at 2:30 in the afternoon. Cecil, how has this COVID, I mean, obviously from our business and the electronic end of things, we go about our business, we wear the mask, what have you. How about on the newspaper end and having to, and more so, I guess, the internet that you feed, your website and so on? How has your job changed over the last, from March the 12th to where we are today?
Well, it's been different. We've had to adjust along with everyone else. First of all, we went for a very long stretch with no live events really to cover.
Sure.
The first from sitting in Bridgestone Arena in Nashville waiting for a basketball game to
Coach Saban on the
tip
phone,
off.
on
The
the
next live event that I actually covered was a Holt Central football game at the start of high school football season. And the next college event that I covered was Alabama soccer when they hosted Tennessee.
Sure.
So have missed that, but it also has changed deadlines. It's had a financial impact on every industry, not just ours, but at some outlets, at some newspapers, at some television stations, you're having to do more with less people.
Indeed.
So it's been a very interesting transition. I wouldn't have expected it, but I've been proud of the way that people have worked through it.
Definitely. Coach Saban has now joined us on the telephone, and we appreciate it. And we are sorry, Coach, that sometimes technology just gives you a hiccup. We were talking before we got cut off about you coaching against former assistants. Do you think about that at all, or is that just something for talk shows to talk about and newspaper columnists to write about?
Well, first of all, it makes me proud that we've had, a lot of guys. I didn't really realize until they asked me the question on the SEC conference call that we actually had. I knew what the next 4 games were, but never thought of it in that context because you kind of think of things one game at a time. And, it makes me proud that all those guys did an outstanding job and really contributed to the success that we've had in the past. And that because they did such a good job, they got the opportunity that they really wanted. And I think all these guys are doing a fantastic job, where they're at. Jimbo's had a lot of success. Lane's had a lot of success. Kirby's built one of the, strongest programs in the country, I think.
Sure.
Jeremy Pruitt's got Tennessee turned around. So, and then there's a lot of other guys in the country that are doing a pretty good job as well. So it makes me very proud, but I'm also very happy for them and their family that they were able to get rewarded and have an opportunity to have success and have their own program.
Coach, whether technology works the way it's supposed to or not, one thing that does always work is Pee Wee is on the phone when we get set to open the show. So Pee Wee in Grand Bay, you're on with Coach Nick Saban. How are you, sir?
Doing well.
Good. What's your question for the coach tonight?
Coach, was watching the game. You had mentioned earlier in the week, about the 3 false starts, pre-snap penalties that we had, and then I believe there was also 1 delay of the game penalty that we had. The stuff that needed to be cleaned up, a little bit better focus, we finish plays, blocks, tackles, and all that kind of stuff. I was just curious of how the team has responded to that this week.
Well, it's something that we harp on all the time. There's 2 kinds of penalties. There's what I call undisciplined type penalties, which would be pre-snap penalties, false starts, missed alignments, missed formations, jumping off sides on defense, And then, there's sometimes you have penalties because you're giving great effort, you make a poor decision, you get a blocking in the back, you get a holding. Those are also choices and decisions, but not in the caliber of, some of these things. And, our players were complaining that, the Missouri defensive linemen were barking out movements and, things like that, which was their excuse, at least for, some of the things that happened. But Bryce Young getting to delay a game. I mean, he's a young guy, a lot of anxiety, trying to do everything perfect. Let the shot clock run down, not several times to, 3 or 4. But that sequence, is great to teach from because we had the ball on the 22-yard line. We got a game to the 7-yard line, then get a sack fumble because it's 3rd and long instead of 3rd manageable, and then they go down and score in 2 plays. All right, so that whole sequence of events, not having 2 hands on the ball in the pocket, letting the shot clock run out, making it a more difficult 3rd down, letting them pin their ears back, and rush in the situation. So, all these things are really great learning opportunities, teaching opportunities for the players. And, I'm sure everybody thinks that, hey, why don't they already know it? Well, if they knew it all, we wouldn't have to practice. We couldn't improve. We'd already have it all done. We don't. There's a lot of things we need to improve on. I didn't think we played nearly as well in the second half as we did the first, and really didn't finish the game. Once the score got 35-3, we were pretty average from then on in. So I think we're going to have to learn how to finish it. We're going to have to learn how to maintain our intensity and play to a standard much higher than we did in this game for the last, I'm going to say, quarter and a half. So a lot of lessons to be learned. Believe me, we address them. You've heard me talk about the good, bad, and the ugly before. And,
yep.
We certainly want to reinforce the positive plays that our players made and appreciate them for what they do when they make good plays. But we also want to point out and teach them so that we can do it better the next time when they make mistakes. And, penalties were a big problem for the last 2 years. They've been a huge problem on our team. And, I think we were like 13th out of 14 teams in penalties last year. And, that's something in the early days here, we were always first or second in penalties. But, it's paying attention to detail and knowing that those details are very important to being successful. And they're all choices and decisions that every player needs to make in terms of their commitment to having the kind of focus and discipline not to have those kind of pre-snap penalties. So we're working on it. We work on it every day. We work on the defense not jumping off sides every day. We have consequences for guys when they do. And I hate to be a punishment, guy, but we just get so frustrated that people don't play with the discipline that we need to. We have to come up with ways to try to make them aware how important it is.
Coach, I know it's not simple. It's not easy. You got to work hard. But, boy, it's nice when you can hand off to guys like Najee and Robinson and when you can throw to guys like Smitty and Waddle and the rest. What a luxury.
Well, those guys have played very well for us, and they've played great football here for, several years now. But, they are weapons. I think, Stark and our offensive coaches do a really good job of featuring the weapons that we have. I think the key for us, though, is we need to develop depth and players behind those players who can play winning football, because in most cases, they're young players and they're going to be really good players, but they have to learn. I think sometimes, people don't, they almost have to learn how to learn, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
It's not something we teach in school. We just assume that everybody knows how to learn. But in a lot of cases, when guys have been so good at what they do and dominated the competition when they were in high school, they didn't really have to sort of focus on attention to detail, doing little things right. So they really didn't have to learn a lot about how to play football. They just kind of relied on their ability. And So I think some of the players, the young players, need to learn how to learn. And part of that is how do you take coaching? It's not criticism. You take it as constructive instruction of how to get better. And every play that you have a failing on is the best opportunity you have to learn. So, but if you get frustrated by it or you don't know how to take the instruction that you're getting, then it takes a longer while for you to develop. So these are all things that come with maturity, but I think it's going to be critical on our team at lots of positions here because we have a lot of good young players who are in backup roles. And when those players got opportunities in the last game, we need for them to play better.
That leads us in, and I was going to go to Cecil, but that leads us in directly to the first question on the Nick Saban Show blog from AL.com. Grant in Russellville, Alabama says, hey, Coach, do you have a number of young players in the secondary this fall. How would you rate them now after watching the Missouri game, Phil? Thanks, and roll tide.
Well, I was encouraged by how they played. I thought they played with a lot of toughness. They played with a lot of effort. I think our two corners did a pretty good job of covering. That was a very challenging first game for anybody in secondary. There was a lot of formation in the boundary. There was a lot of motion. There was a lot of unbalanced formations. All right, so this is probably as difficult an adjustment game that we had that we'll have all year long in terms of what the secondary had to do based on all these formations and adjustments. And I thought they handled that fairly well. We did make some mistakes that are correctable. And I think it's going to be important that everybody in this group focuses on what we need to do to improve. But I also was encouraged by how they played and how that group is developing. But again, at this position, we have some of the same issues. We have a lot of young players who are the backup players who don't have a lot of experience, and they need to grow and develop and learn how to play winning football as well.
You're listening to the Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. For auto, home, and life insurance, call Alpha. Cecil, thank you for patiently waiting. What's next on your mind?
Know what to expect, and how has Najee handled that?
Yeah, I usually tell them, and I go through the whole lineage of, Glenn Coffey and, Mark Ingram, and then Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson, and then, Trent Richardson and Eddie Lacy, and, then Eddie Lacy and C.J. Yeldon, and then Kenyon Drake, and then Derrick Henry, and how, even, both of our backs last year or 2 years ago, one gets drafted in the first round, one gets drafted in the third round. Nobody else had two backs drafted. But my approach with it is, look, we're going to play more than one guy at your position. I don't really want guys to carry the ball 35 times a game because I want you to be as good a player in the 10th game of the year as you are in the first game of the year. Your durability is important. The position you play has the shortest shelf life of any position in the NFL. So the more trips you have on your tires when you leave college, because you didn't carry the ball other times, the longer your pro career is going to be. Right? So there's good and bad. You're going to play plenty to be able to create value for yourself. And I can go through the lineage of where all those guys got drafted that I just mentioned, and how well they're doing in the NFL and how long they played. So kind of a selling point in a positive way, I think, that they can see an opportunity to play because they know 2 or 3 guys are going to play at the position. And they also understand that, hey, I'm not going to come out of here, without any tread on my tires, so I can have maybe a little longer career at the next level.
Interesting. And, this is not to point the finger at any other school, but you and I have talked, Coach, about the number of players that Bama has in the National Football League. And I did a quick check prior to the game on Saturday. Mizzou has 12 players in the league. Bama has nearly 60, not counting guys on the practice squad. And my goodness, what a recruiting tool that is.
Well, there's no question about it. We've been able to recruit some really good players here, and I think the coaches through the years have done a really good job of developing those players. And I'm also proud of the fact that, a lot of those guys graduate, and we've had one of the higher graduation rates in our league and in the country, actually. So,
yep.
And I think that's what makes a good program. And I think when you create value for your players, and other players can see that, that's why they continue to want to come and be a part of the program. And, that's what we continue to try to do.
Let's talk a little bit about Jimbo's bunch for this weekend, Texas A&M. We'll take a question here first from the Nick Saban Show blog, and then we'll go off from there. Travis in Nashville says, Kellen Mond is a rare senior quarterback with experience in the SEC this year. How have you seen him improve and mature over the years at A&M? It seems like he's been there for 13 years already. I don't know. He's been there forever, it seems.
Yeah, well, this will be the 3rd year he started against us.
Yeah.
And, I think, he's really a dual threat guy. I mean, I think people underestimate his speed and ability to run, scramble, extend plays, as a passer, keep his eyes downfield and make plays. And he's developed, and I think this is probably what he's improved most at. Of course, Jimbo, I think, is a very good quarterback coach. He's improved his reading and passing and efficiency, in the passing game.
Sure.
And that's to answer the question. That's what I see. But to me, he is one of the more experienced, quarterbacks and very talented quarterbacks, in our league. And he has some pretty good weapons around him. He's got 2 really, really good running backs, a really good tight end. They got basically a new group of receivers, but they're talented guys. They're 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line. So this is a really, good offensive team. And, we're going to have to play really well to be able to contain him and be able to cover them.
And that offensive line, they call themselves the Maroon Goons, and they have guys who are making their 31st consecutive start this weekend. So not only have they been around, but they have been starters, and they've played well as a unit.
There's no question. They play very well as a unit. They understand what they're doing technically, as well as their offensive scheme. And they do a really, really good job, I think, of blocking running plays, combination blocks, blocking different fronts, and they're good pass protectors. So this is going to be a challenge for our front 7.
Coach, I know it's early and it's one game, but you're going to be hard-pressed to find a more potent pass-catch combination in the league than that one.
Well, those 2 guys are both really talented, and they're really good guys. They're really hard workers. They work hard every day in practice. They set a great example for the teammates. And they are productive, and they are very competitive. And, those guys got it in their DNA to try to be the best they can be. And I think in this day and age, and in this season especially, that's one of the things that we've tried to emphasize to our players, because there's not the same, sort of external factors that can get you revved up like in a normal season. There's not the spirit of the crowd. There's not the fans, hanging around. It's just completely different than it's ever been. You don't have the same noise in the stadium. So the guys that have the right DNA, and you've heard me talk about this before,
Sure.
those two guys have it. They're going to have a chance to have great years because that's how they compete, and they don't need all that other stuff to get them going.
We've got Jay on the phone, Coach. He's joining us from Monroe, Georgia. Jay, welcome to the Nick Saban Show. Hello.
Hey, it's nice to be here. My name's Gabe. But what I'd like to ask is that how do you think the offense needs to look with Mac Jones running quarterback now? Do you think we're going to give the ball more to Najee and let him run the rock a little bit? Or do you feel like Mac can make passes that we need to execute a national championship team?
Well, he sure as heck made passes this past weekend,
I don't
Coach.
really, want to make any predictions about any championships or anything like that, but I think having balance on offense is really important. I think we've always had that. Obviously, last year we were one of the most dynamic passing teams in the country, especially when Tua was playing, and Mac did a pretty good job when he took over. And we have all the confidence in the world in Mac. We haven't really changed our offense or our philosophy offensively because Mac's playing quarterback relative to who played in the past when Tua was here. So, we're confident and we feel like we're going to have to be an explosive passing team. And we also think that we're going to have to be able to run the ball efficiently and effectively if we're going to have the kind of success. There's certain times in the game where when you can't run the ball, it's really a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage when you can't run the ball in the red zone. It's a disadvantage when you can't run the ball at the end of games, and end of halves. Last year, the two games that we lost, LSU scored 14 points in the last 2 minutes of the half, and Auburn scored 10.
Yeah.
If we had the ball and kept the ball, that wouldn't happen. All right. So, there's a lot of reasons that running the ball still is an effective way in certain situations in the game that you need to be able to do it. And we're not conservative. We're not trying to protect Mac. We got all the confidence in the world in him, and we're going to feature the best players we have. And two of those guys are both playing receiver, and we're going to get them the ball every way we can.
Cecil? Let's turn your microphone on there and get you set up again.
Coach, you were coaching in the SEC before the expansion and the admission of Texas A&M, and this is maybe a little difficult to quantify. But is it easier now, do you think, for SEC teams to go into Texas and recruit, because you've had a tremendous amount of success in Texas, and how much of that might be it's sort of SEC territory at this point?
I do think that any place that you have exposure in your league, people start becoming a little more aware of your league. They follow what's happening. And I do think that it's probably enhanced. We've always been able to get some good players out of Texas, even before Texas A&M was in the league. But I think now that they are, it's actually, helped us be able to get some players. And I don't know if that's the case with other schools in our league. When I was at LSU, Texas was Houston was only like 4 hours away, so we always got players in Texas. But there's a lot of good high school players in Texas, and the ones that we have gotten have certainly been, none that you would be disappointed in. They've been a lot of really good players. So I think the SEC, though, has kind of a national reputation, and I think this probably comes from, before people had their own, every conference had their own network. We had CBS as our own network, and the SEC on CBS was national game every week somewhere. So there was a lot of exposure on the national level that we had before other people in other leagues got to where we are. There were a lot of regional games on TV, but we were always on nationally. And I think that kind of exposure is very beneficial to being able to recruit players all over the country as well.
Exactly. Let's go back to the phones, Coach. Brian is joining us from Lexington, Alabama. Hello, Brian. Welcome to the Nick Saban Show.
Hey guys, how y'all doing tonight?
Doing good, Brian.
Good.
Doing good.
Doing good.
Hey, Coach, I just have a question for you. This is not about the players, but it's about the coaches. I know we have, every year, people come after our coaches and everything. What do you necessarily look for in a coach? And I'll let you elaborate on that.
Well, I think first of all, I'd have to quantify it by the fact that anybody that I hire in our organization or that we hire in our organization, I think the first two things I'm always concerned about is what is their character, what is their ability to communicate. I think character setting a good example for players, being somebody that players can emulate, caring about players, not just as football players, but as people and as students. I think that's really, really important in having a good college program. I think the ability to communicate, you have to have to be able to develop relationships and in most cases to be a good teacher. All right, so those two things would be really, really important. Then you want to have people who have knowledge, maybe experience, have the right balance, on your staff, and you don't want everybody to be screaming and hollering. You want some guys to be a little more maybe technical in their approach or cerebral in their approach. So to have a really good balance on your staff, I think recruiting, but that goes back to ability to communicate, develop relationships, is a big part of it. So, all those sort of factors are, things that we consider. And your ability to get along with the other people on the staff is also really important. And in our case, I want people who are going to buy into doing things the way we want to do them. We don't necessarily hire people to come in and reinvent the wheel and tell us how they want to do stuff. We have a certain way that we want things done, a certain way that we want to do things, and we want them to buy into that. So make contribution, have new ideas, new energy, new enthusiasm, but also be able to buy in and do things the way we want them done so that everybody sort of buys into the same principles and values and respects that and trusts that, because I think that's one of the first elements of having a team togetherness.
Visiting, of course, with Coach Nick Saban. It's Thursday night, the Nick Saban Show on the air from Bob Baumhauer's Victory Grill. I was happy to hear you speak positively about Christian Barmore's health and availability at your press conference yesterday.
Yeah, he's done well this week. He practiced a little bit the week before, right? But it was more rehabilitation type practice. It really wasn't. It wasn't probably 100%. So, I always ask players, how they feel before we play a game, and do they think they can go out there and perform, like they need to. And I respect, whatever players, say. And, we kind of both felt like, maybe he wasn't 100%. Maybe another week would really, help him. And so this week he's been, really practicing 100%. So hopefully he'll be able to play this week.
That's wonderful. The other thing I thought was very important, you pointed it out at your press conference. People are hung up on statistics, and of course, oftentimes that does tell the story. But you talked about Sam Johnson, the punter, who averaged 39 yards a punt over the weekend. But it's what he did with those punts that were actually more important than the final average number. And that's something a lot of fans don't see when they look at the kicking game, the punting game, and so on.
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. When you play on special teams, having great specialists is great, right? But those guys have to be able to make a great specialist. To me, you have to be able to do what the team needs you to do. Like if we're in a certain protection and we want to punt the ball to the right because that's the way we're blocking and that's the way we're protecting. But when the guy kicks the ball to the left, you really have a hard time covering. So to have someone who can do that consistently, I think is really important. The other thing that's really important is hang time. People don't look at the hang time statistics of a punter, but if you punt the ball 39, 40, 42 yards and you have great hang time, then they're going to have very few returnable balls. And if you place the ball where you're supposed to place it relative to coverage. So net punt is probably way more important than punting average. We've had guys here that could, really punt well. JK could really punt well, but he was a great directional punter. And he had great hang time on the ball. So we never gave up returns, even though, he'd punt them 50, 60 yards at times, but we still had time to cover him.
Yeah.
And last year we struggled a little bit because he punted a lot of line drives, had low hang time, didn't have the correct placement of the ball. And, we gave up more returns last year than we typically do.
Cecil Hurt, what else is on your mind, sir?
Yeah, I was curious with Coach if he was very active in the summer in terms of masking, social distancing, public service announcements. Did the one with Big Al that got a lot of attention, and just wondered how the weekend went. You seemed to your team seemed to really observe the sideline protocols and so forth, and just how that adjustment has been on a road trip and when you were away from home, really for the first time.
Yeah, well, I think our medical staff has done not only a great job at taking care of our players, but educating our players on the importance of managing their social bubble, their personal bubble, when they're with us and also when they're not with us. We test it every day, so we're trying to make the players feel comfortable that the guys they're with and they're playing against and practicing with are okay. It also helps us in social tracing. So a lot of the things that we've done are very positive, but I think because we've given it so much attention, I think like Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General, speaking to the team, several other, doctors speaking to the team about this, their understanding of, this disease and how contagious it is and what they have to do to, manage their personal bubble so they can stay healthy so they can play. I think the educational part of it has been very beneficial to us. And I was a little concerned, going on the road, what it would be like at the hotel, airplane. But, we haven't had a whole lot of repercussions from a negative standpoint because I think our players did do a pretty good job of following the protocol.
Coach, time for your final word as this hour has flown by. Your final word, as always, presented each week by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, obviously we're excited about, playing at home, playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I'm sure that whatever fans are there are going to be very enthusiastic in terms of what they do to try to encourage our players to play their best. And I think from a team standpoint, we're still, trying to work on the identity that we want to have to be a dominant team, to understand what it takes, not just to win games, but to beat other people. And, that starts with each individual player, dominating their box and being able to do it one play at a time for 60 minutes in the game and doing it with the discipline, effort, toughness, intensity that you need to maintain to be able to do something like that. And this has been an unusual season, a lot of uncertainties, but that's still our goal for our team. And obviously from last week, we played very well and did some great things, but didn't really finish like we want. And that's something that we're going to have to learn how to do. And that's something that our fans can help us do if if we're going to have success this year against very good teams, and Texas A&M is a really good team. So everything that you can do to help our team make noise when they have the ball, all the things that make home field a big advantage, which it's always been for us, is certainly going to be important in this game this week.
It will be. Coach, as always, thanks for your time, sir, and we'll catch up with you this weekend.
All right, thanks. All right, you guys stay safe.
All right, you too. Coach Nick Saban joining us from his home here in Tuscaloosa. Cecil Hurt, thank you so much for your time this evening. Always great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Eli. I'm glad we got the technical difficulties solved before we had to do our medley of tunes from South Pacific. Some Rodgers and Hammerstein from Eli and I.
There you go. Nice point. Well said.